Hi there, everyone. This is Adam here with another of our NCS Community Awareness podcasts. As you know, a substitute for what would have been a big social gathering, which is not what we can do at the moment. I'm here with Simon from Winter Comfort. Hi, Simon.
Hiya.
Hi. And one of the sort of joys of doing this particular thing is there's a lot of organisations that I know a lot about, probably because of like previous roles, but I'm really coming in cold with you guys, so I'll be quite a good proxy for the audience, I think. So yeah, perhaps you can tell us a bit about what Winter Comfort is. Just start us off there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so as you've mentioned, I'm Simon. I'm the fundraising manager for Winter Comfort for the homeless. So the clue is in the title a little bit, gives the game away. So we're a homeless charity working in the city of Cambridge, and we welcome all those that are homeless or vulnerably housed that need support or access to welfare provision and a whole range of other services that we run from our centre in Cambridge. So I'll talk you through some of that as we go through this podcast.
Yeah, good to hear, because with it being Cambridge, the majority of our young people are probably in the Bedfordshire area, but we do have Cambridge young people, so hopefully this will be of value to them as well. When you say Cambridge, like if I think Bedfordshire is actually made up of three local authorities: Luton, Bedford, and then Central Bedfordshire. With you delivering in Cambridgeshire, is it like the whole of the county?
Yeah, so obviously we're based in the city, and a lot of the responsibility for the homeless people we support is picked up by Cambridge City Council. But yeah, people come from right across the county into Cambridge, because actually often people find themselves homeless and they're in Cambridge, or they head towards Cambridge because there are services to support you if you are homeless. So yeah, there is a sort of bit of a draw from the wider area, including Bedfordshire and parts of Suffolk, where people are drawn into Cambridge to get support or to escape whatever it is that's made them homeless in the first place. Some people move location in order to escape whatever that situation was that made them homeless in the first place. So we work with people from all over the place, of all nationalities as well. So there's a number of people that we support that aren't from the UK and don't have right to remain in the UK, citizenship and what have you, and so we pick those guys up as well.
And with this kind of support that you offer, that's quite a broad term, but could you be a bit more specific about what it is that you offer, how you help people?
Yeah, certainly can. So we're open 7 days a week. Well, prior to COVID, we're open 7 days a week. We're having to adapt. So I'm gonna talk as if we're running as normal, and then we can talk on the COVID stuff if we have the time. So yeah, we're open 7 days a week. And we run a basic welfare service. So that means, in real terms, hot showers, cooked breakfasts, laundry service, and a clothing bank. So and toiletry bank. So it's really just providing the basic stuff that people need to survive sleeping out on the streets. And it's tough all year round. It's not an easy thing to be street homeless at any time of the year. And so people really depend on that service to help them get through really and survive and find somewhere warm. When you wake up wet and cold and damp at 5:30 in the morning and you can't get back to sleep, there's people have a desperate need to go somewhere, and so most of them will head towards Winter Comfort. So that's our sort of welfare, and then we run a whole load of support services. So we've got a housing advisor, we've got a counsellor. We've got a team of what we call project workers, and they run Winter Comfort on a day-to-day basis. And they all have areas of sort of expertise. So one of them is in charge of employment. One of them is in charge of what we call social inclusion. So that's trips and education and heritage activities. Because one of the things we know is actually if you're street homeless, access to heritage activities and positive stuff is really important. In terms of keeping people's confidence and self-esteem, and keeping people feeling good about themselves, that stuff is increasingly important. So that's a little bit about our our reasonably basic services, our welfare stuff. We also we run learning and development and employment-based work as well. So we're trying to help people move out of homelessness and back into employment. and we run a couple of social enterprises. So basically, they're social businesses where we employ people that are either homeless or recovering from homelessness, get back into employment. And those social enterprises also generate income that supports our welfare work as well. They're quite important. We've got about, I think at the last count, we've got 16 people working in those enterprises. So it's a really important area for us.
Just on the subject of employment, if I look back 10 years ago, one of the biggest issues was you can't get a job unless you've got somewhere to live, and there was the sort of catch-22. Is that still an issue, or?
Yes, yeah. Frustratingly, it is. Yeah. So a lot of people will use our address in order to access benefits. It's still an issue. Even if you want to go to a GP surgery, you still need to have an address in order to register for a GP. So you've got doctors, banking, job centre, dentists, a whole range. So that's just 4. There's loads of other things, but they're 4 areas where you must have an address in order to register or access those services. So frustratingly, that is still a big issue for the homeless community.
And with people using your own venue as the address, is there any legal implications around that, or does that suffice?
No, because we're making do on that. So banking, for example, because of identity theft and a whole range of other things going on, banking has become increasingly more difficult to get people set up with a bank account. And that's a real blocker. You need a bank account to get access to get benefits, if you have got a job, to get paid. And it becomes just one of those other barriers that people that are homeless face in terms of that journey out of homelessness. That's just one small example of where the system is really not designed to help people get back out of homelessness. Once you become street homeless, there's a whole load of different layers of things that get put on top of people that prevent them from recovering from that, really. So that's what a lot of our staff spend a lot of their time doing. People arrive at Winter Comfort in all sorts of different with all sorts of different needs and in different condition, and it's our staff's job to support those individuals and try and unpick some of the stuff that's holding them back, get them back, get them on the housing list, get them saving up for deposits, get them back into work. We do that whole bit, really, and support people through the hostel system. So if you're street homeless and you're single, for example, you have to go through the hostel system, and that's quite difficult for many of our service users with quite difficult mental health problems, for example. And so they're all the sort of things that our staff are sort of dealing with day to day, really, and what Winter Comfort's there to do.
It seems like there has to be a lot go right, it sounds like, to actually get somebody housed, because of all the barriers that are centred around that. And I'm reminded of being out of work myself at one point and using the universal credit system. And even as someone who's quite IT literate, I found that a real challenge. And I had access to a computer, and that was all good. But even things like that seem like an extra level of challenge. And in a sense, it seems a bit of a leaving behind almost with some people.
Yes, that's something that we've seen. There's certain things in homelessness that haven't changed. The move towards digital stuff has actually become, again, a much bigger issue than it used to be. The job centre, for example, is all online now, and you need to be computer savvy in order to register. And for a lot of the people that come to Winter Comfort, one of the reasons that's caused them to get to Winter Comfort is the lack of skills and IT literacy. So then one of the ways out of homelessness, you have to have those skills to move out. So things like we've got a computer training room at Winter Comfort, and normally I would be showing students around at this point and talking them through some of this stuff and introducing them to some of our service users. But that space has become increasingly important, because actually without it, people can't run their lives, and also have access to things like Facebook and keep in contact with family members, which is also a real important thing for helping people recover from homelessness, is maintaining family relationships and social connections.
It sounds like a huge amount of social work that's going on, essentially, and I've seen that in the community voluntary sector with some of the cuts around social work from a local authority point of view. It seems to have been left but it seems like local authorities lean quite heavily on social action, what they call community interest companies and things like that, hybrids and charities and so on, to sort of take up the slack, really. And it just sounds like you're doing more than just, say, housing people. There's a lot involved in that.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, it's a huge, people sort of see homelessness as quite a two-dimensional issue, and actually it's three-dimensional. There's all sorts of different things at play. And I think that's one of the things that we've seen as an organisation, that we're now dealing with people that probably a decade ago would not be street homeless, but because of cutbacks and because of the way the system has changed, and it's frankly leaving more people behind, we are, we've become sort of at the forefront of dealing with more stuff than just people being homeless. We're dealing with a whole host of different issues that lead them to homelessness.
And on that, I think one of the great assumptions or even stereotypes that people put forward about people being homeless is that it's drugs or it's alcohol, and that the reluctance perhaps to provide people with money on the streets is an assumption that you're just going to go and buy drugs and alcohol with it. And I wondered what your experience was with working with people, and is that true, or is there a variety, or is there commonalities in reasons why people have become homeless?
So I think from my point of view, this is sort of 5 years. This is 5 years of working at Winter Comfort now, and I'd worked in homelessness before, but this is the first time at this sort of level, and very much at the sharp end. I'm coming to work in the morning, and there's people outside that have slept out that night. So I'm seeing it, firsthand, as it were. And I think the reality is, yes, there are some that would fall into that group that people expect, that are street drinking, and they've got substance misuse issues. But for I would say, that's just some. There's a huge number of people that are impacted by homelessness. And no one story. I think one of the things you learn is there's no one story the same. Isn't the sort of tick box of, if you've got that problem, you're street homeless. That's the direct correlation. It's actually, if you've got a combination of different factors going on, so you've got debt, unemployment, relationship breakdown. If you've got those three, and maybe some substance misuse going on as well, you've got those four things present in your life all at once, the likelihood of becoming street homeless is pretty high. So I think the key thing is that not everybody is impacted by drug and alcohol abuse and street begging, and there's also a whole range of people that I know personally that have been street homeless, who would never engage in any of that sort of stuff. I'll give you an example. One of my colleagues who now works for our cleaning company, Michael, he did 23 years in the RAF, and then following that he did 12 years as a bus driver in Cambridge. So he's from the area. So he's been working his whole working life. He left his job as a bus driver thinking he'd easily pick up another job, but what he found is actually he didn't pick up another job. And at the same time, his landlord got in touch and said, actually, I want the house back now. So he found himself in a perfect storm, effectively, where his accommodation was gone, his job was gone, and then when he became street homeless, there was no way of him getting out of being street homeless, if that makes sense. Job, because he didn't have an address, and so once that happens, and that is a fairly common story that we hear. And for Michael, drugs and alcohol were not part of his life, and he's done really well now. But I guess it gives you an idea of the sort of things that we see and the realities that some people are not stereotypical homeless that you might expect. And I went to an event recently with Michael, and they asked him how long he'd been working for the charity, and asked me how long I've been homeless for. Which was fantastic. It was brilliant because it was so good, because it was actually, in that environment, people couldn't tell the difference between us. And I think that probably is quite an important statement, actually.
I was just curious about some of the psychology that might be attached to that, the sort of maybe some shame, about being homeless, or particularly if you're in the RAF, who are considered to be, they solve problems and they're resilient and all those kinds of things. So it was probably good for him to have that moment. It sounds.
And he's an incredible guy, really, and I love telling his story. But I'll give you, he slept in the bus station, and old colleagues of his would go past, and he would hide from them because he'd be sleeping out in the bus station and didn't want his old colleagues to see that he was now homeless. There's a real stigma in our society around homelessness, but it is really very common.
And with us being in the middle of lockdown at the moment, all right, there's been a little bit of easing as of the 29th of June. I wondered, as an organisation and maybe other homelessness organisations, what kind of conversations you're having about what the next 6 months are going to look like, with economic challenges and people losing jobs and all the things that entails.
Yeah, I think I have to be careful not to sound very pessimistic here, but history will teach, whatever happens to the economy, history teaches us that if there's a dip or a recession, homelessness increases. Now, I'm going to sound very old now, but for those of us that remember the recession in the early 90s, house repossessions were really high. Homelessness became really high pretty much overnight, and that's actually where Winter Comfort stems from. We were established to respond to that situation. And unfortunately, I think probably over the next year, we're going to see yet more people become homeless. And that's going to be quite challenging, actually. It's been difficult during this time because people have been housed by local authority. And it's been quite interesting how many people have sort of come out of the woodwork and said, actually, I am street homeless. The numbers are far higher than a lot of people thought, actually. So I think that's going to be the challenge for us over the next year. I think is dealing with a potential increase in the number of people coming through our centre needing help, really.
I'm getting an image of sort of the start, your organisations are like that as this sort of wave is approaching, and like wondering how much you can cope as an organisation, because I'm aware of how funding works and what the limitations that can sometimes give you, despite the heart of the organisation wanting to do more. There's only so much that can be done. We're constantly in that sort of we're in that space constantly between we could do more. We could do way more. We could open more. We could do more. We could do more services. We could, we're looking to do more outreach-based stuff, because we have an issue currently when people first move into accommodation. It's a real key time where people need a lot of support, because to transition from being street homeless straight into accommodation, for a lot of the people that we look after and support, that transition is really very difficult. And so we're looking to do a bit more work in that area, but we're constantly in this space between, have we got the funding to do that? Can we carry on? Can we do a good job of that? Have we got enough funding in place to do it? So that's a difficulty in our sector. There's some potential opportunities, though. I regularly see the updates on what funding is available, and I imagine there'll be, if not already, something about that. It strikes me as a touch of a shame, because I live in Milton Keynes, and there was a growing homelessness problem over a sort of 10-year period, and reading in the newspaper about all the things that were planned, and certainly a lot of things that were enacted to support that, and it just felt a bit like they were just getting on top of it and making a bit of a difference. And it just seems like there's another wave coming, and questions over preparation.
Let's hope that we're wrong.
For sure.
That's our hope, because obviously, we're a charity that want homelessness to be reduced or minimised. We don't think it will be eradicated. I think homelessness is a feature of modern society, especially in an area where accommodation is so expensive. But obviously we want to see the numbers go down. We don't want to see them go up. We want them to go down, because actually for each person, everyone that is included in that count of being street homeless is a person with a story, with a family, and with a background. And so for us, that is, we want to see that reduced, really. And it's incredibly difficult supporting people that are street homeless. They go through so much. There's in terms of how safe they feel sleeping out at night. The assault rate for people that are street homeless is absolutely astronomical. So there's it's complicated, and there's a lot to it we have to deal with.
It's like it's difficult to know where the starting point is. I have a previous career working in addiction in prisons, and the assumption that we as an organisation that helps people eradicate, hopefully, their addiction. It's more than that, like you're saying. It's mental health, it's social difficulties, it's sometimes just a simple act of not really knowing what to do in life, because maybe some of the quote training that might have helped in early days, or parenting that might have been absent, that people really struggle. So yeah, there's a lot to consider there. I just want to move on to social action. I'm thinking, we're talking a lot about certainly the problem. I'm curious about solutions as well. With the young people that could potentially be on the programme, what kind of things can they help your organisation with? I've got a little idea that came into my head as you were talking when you said about what people need, and I wondered what maybe the top 5 things are that people need. And the reason I asked that is maybe social action can be doing some fundraising to buy items for you as an organisation. What would you say are the important ones?
Yeah, so we well, there's a few different things. Obviously, the welfare side of our work, we get through a huge amount of socks and pants and toiletries, toothbrushes, toothpastes, shaving gel, razors, all that stuff that those that have got houses and stable lives take for granted, quite frankly. So we get through loads of that sort of stuff, and also food wise. So obviously we rely on donations for food. We do cook breakfast every day. And then we do hot lunches as well. So there's always a sort of a running list of food items that we need on our website. And that just means we don't have to buy quite so much, and people can give directly to that cause. They can tangibly see their food being served and going to the people that need support. So they're 2 key areas that people can help. And the third, obviously, in social action, and one of the reasons I'm keen to do this sort of podcast is actually to help explain the reasons and the understanding behind homelessness, so people can come to understand the issue better. So that's also important. So if people listening to this podcast can spend a bit of time understanding what's going on with homelessness, they can share that with people who haven't had the privilege of this podcast. That's also one of the things that people can help with. Reality is homelessness is really tough, and it isn't as clear. It isn't as clear cut as people make bad decisions and end up street homeless. It's not that, not that straightforward. And then obviously, the other area where we always need help is with our fundraising. So we rely on fundraised income in order to carry on our work. And the irony being, we get funded to do our learning and development work. And our social enterprises also receive funding, and we've got customers. But actually, the welfare part of our work is the most difficult to fund, actually, because there's a sort of a view that we're just there handing stuff out. It's not the case. We're there giving stuff out that people need to survive. It isn't some sort of luxury service. So yeah, fundraising in that front would be really helpful to us, actually.
Yeah, and I can see why that would be certainly tempting in any of the community voluntary sectors organisations that I've been speaking to. The NCS isn't really designed specifically for fundraising. It's much more about social action and doing things that are noticeable. And I wondered, from a sort of digital point of view, a couple of ideas, I suppose. One idea is, as a bid writer myself, there's always a section in the application that says, how have you involved members of your community in the design of this project or this initiative or whatever. I just wondered if there's any scope for young people doing research or interviewing people or capturing stories of individuals, or beyond just funding, maybe just capturing stories as a way of combating some of the stereotypes that people might have.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the ideas would be great is if some young people wanted to organise an online webinar or a Q&A session, and obviously we can work on that collectively, because actually, like I said, we're trying to reach out to young people and provide some content and some learning around homelessness and what happens and how we get people out of homelessness. So yeah, that would be a really good thing to do, because they could share that with their peers and friends, invite their friends to actually attend that, and we could probably end up reaching an awful lot of young people through doing this sort of format that we've got running today. It is tricky because obviously the nature of what we do, sometimes we look after, we've got people in our building and it isn't suitable to have guests in running stuff, if that makes sense. We've got sort of quite a strict safeguarding policy, which I always feel like I feel like I'm hiding behind, but I'm not. It's just the reality of like sometimes sometimes it's quite a challenging environment, and to have groups of young people come into that life is quite difficult. We tend to get young people volunteering with us, and they come regularly over a number of weeks, every week, because actually then they start to become part of the community, and they start to meet some of the key people that come through Winter Comfort. And so we prefer to do that sort of volunteering if people are interested.
Is there a minimum age for that?
18. So if people are sort of just finished sixth form, then we take people on voluntary from that point on, really. And that is, it's really rewarding. I'd highly recommend that, actually. It's probably one of the best ways we could get the message out there about homelessness, is if young people come and volunteer with us and actually spend some time getting to know, the realities. It's really important.
Yeah, because I think like a lot of the reality is important, because we all have our prejudices, we all have our kind of stereotypes that we form, and how do you break those down? Usually by just communicating with individuals and expelling some of those in many cases. And like I said earlier about the assumptions that people might make about why people are homeless, and you answered by saying there's a huge variety of different things, and there might be somewhat of a common thing approaching, with the virus at the moment, and maybe stories such as I was a restaurateur and I lost my business. And, there's this sort of cascade is the potential for that, which would not only combat the assumptions that people might make, but also give rise to more support in that idea as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we welcome people on our volunteer team from all sorts of backgrounds. So we've got people that are doing it because they're looking to get a career in social work, or GP, they're going to become a GP, or they're looking at becoming a solicitor or something like that, that's going to be in a relevant field. Equally, we get people that are doing history and IT and all sorts of different things. And actually we need that mixture of people, because that's good, but also because of the variety of what we deliver, there's always space for people to do voluntary work with us that covers all sorts of different angles. Some of our best volunteers just work in the kitchen, but they work in the kitchen, and actually they find that's sort of the heartbeat of the building, and they get to meet all the key people, and they they get to engage firsthand with service users and get to know them. So there's a huge range of different opportunities, really, on that front.
From a social action point of view as well, it sounds like you're quite open to ideas and creative, so it doesn't have to be, we come up with ideas. It's sometimes that the young people have their own ideas that they might need to run by you, and it sounds like there's a lot of opportunity there as well, just to see how they can help. We're open to all of that stuff. We try, by nature what we welcome people from all walks of life, so it, that correlates in our voluntary work as well, and social action. So we're more than happy to hear from people that want to support in any way, really. And you're happy being the main contact for any young people that want to get in contact with you. So the email and the phone number that you've given me, are you happy for that to be displayed in the comments?
Yes, of course. That's fine. And also people can contact us through Facebook and Twitter, and through our website. But generally sort of Facebook is pretty good.
I'll include all those links in the script for the episode. Thank you very much, Simon. That's been a good insight into your organisation. I'd like to have known a bit more about what it is specifically that you do and what your day-to-day is, but we're kind of working towards possibly doing other podcast episodes that are more focused on the groundwork, let's say, as well. So perhaps we can consider you for that in the future. And I'm thinking, I hope that you're able to join us in person next year for the actual community awareness days.
Absolutely. More than happy to do that. I missed out the numbers at the beginning. So on average we're seeing between sort of 70 and 80 people a day come through our building. So it gives you an idea of the sort of scale of the challenge we've got and the number of people we work with. I missed that out at the beginning.
That's all right. Now keep it of info.
It's for a few months, so I'm a bit.
All right, thanks very much, man. I'm going to conclude now, and like I say, hope to see you again in the future. Thanks, Simon.
Thank you. Thanks.